Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. 4 years away, and my father's lake house still haunted my thoughts. But when I returned with my family, strangers were living inside, claiming it was an Airbnb. What began as a homecoming turned into a battle for legacy, justice, and the truth behind a quiet neighborhood's darkest secret. I hadn't seen the old place in 4 years. 4 years of airports, hotel rooms, and project deadlines. I'd buried myself in work all over the country designing roads and bridges that I'd never drive on. But every late night, I spent hunched over a laptop in some concrete high-rise. My mind drifted back here, to the lake, the smell of cedar walls, the creak of that porch swing my dad hung himself. Now finally, I was home. The gravel crunched under the tires of my old Toyota Land Cruiser as we rolled through the pine corridor that led down to the house. Early morning sun filtered through the trees like golden mist, and the lake glimmered just beyond the ridge. My wife Mia sat next to me with a travel mug of coffee, while our 6-year-old Elias was fast asleep in the back seat, clutching his stuffed otter. We crested the hill, and there it was, the Wilkins house. A 2-story log cabin with green shutters, built by my dad with his own hands in the late 80s, piece by piece. I'd played on that deck, patched those shingles, helped him run wire through the attic. It should have felt like coming home, but it didn't, because there were 3 cars parked in the driveway. Not just parked, squeezed in like someone lived here full time. A silver Jeep, a mud-splattered sedan, and a beat-up pickup with a "Don't Tread on Me" sticker peeling off the tailgate. I felt a jolt of confusion, then something colder, a slow, crawling anger that started in my gut and spread to my chest. "Grayson, who are those people?" Mia asked, tightening her grip on her coffee. I didn't answer. I just killed the engine and opened the door. A dog started barking from somewhere inside. Then the front door opened, and out strolled a guy I'd never seen before. Mid-30s, sunburned, wearing cargo shorts and a stained tank top, beer can in one hand, vape pen in the other. He blinked at me like I was the one intruding. "Yo, you lost or something?" he said, walking out onto the porch like he owned the place. I stepped forward, slow, steady. "No, I live here. This is my house." He laughed, actually laughed. "Nah, bro, this is an Airbnb. We paid for the week. You must be confused." "I'm not confused," I said, pulling the folder out from under my arm, the one with my dad's deed, the updated title in my name, the county plat map, everything. "Okay," he said, tilting his head mockingly. "You got paperwork. Cool, I got beer. Why don't you get off my rental property before I call someone who gives a shit?" Another man appeared in the doorway behind him, heavier build, wearing only a robe and holding a half-eaten banana. He took one look at me and snorted. "We got another one," he said to someone inside. The third came out with a baseball bat slung over his shoulder, tattoos crawling up both arms like ivy. "This guy bothering you, Dan?" I didn't flinch. "You're all trespassing. You need to get out right now." "Yeah?" Bat Guy said. "Why don't you go file a complaint with the Tooth Fairy, man? Karen gave us the green light." "Who?" "The HOA lady, Cypress Lake Estates, Karen Delmore, authorized agent and all that. She's got contracts, papers, whole thing's legit. So unless you're her boss—" "I'm the goddamn owner," I snapped. "You think some HOA bureaucrat can lease out a house she doesn't even own? This isn't even in the HOA jurisdiction." Cargo Short snorted again. "Whatever you say, bud. We paid. We stay. You don't like it, talk to our lawyer." "Gladly," I said, pulling my phone out. "But first, I'll talk to the sheriff." I stepped back, took a wide-angle video of the house, the license plates, their smug faces. I zoomed in on a stack of beer cans by the porch, the hammock strung between 2 trees I planted when I was 10. The dog shit right in the middle of the flower bed my mom used to tend. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" Banana Robe barked. "You can't film us." "I'm documenting criminal trespass," I said as I dialed. "And if you want to get cute, I'll add vandalism, destruction of property, and unlawful occupancy. You think we're scared of some rich boy with a clipboard?" Bat Guy stepped closer. "We know people. Karen's connected." Mia stepped out of the car at that moment, holding Elias on her hip. I saw Bat Guy's eyes shift to her, and something in me snapped like a cable under tension. "You take one more step toward my family, and I swear to God—" "Whoa. Whoa," the one called Dan raised his hands like this was all a joke. "Okay, dude, chill. We don't want trouble. Just Call your cop buddy and let them sort it out. We're not going anywhere until someone tells us to." "Oh, someone will," I said, voice like gravel. I stayed right there by the car, phone pressed to my ear, recording everything. The dispatcher told me a unit would be en route in 20 minutes. While I waited, I paced the edge of the driveway, filming every inch of damage. Crushed ferns, cigarette burns on the porch railing, the new fire pit someone had built right where my dad used to stack firewood. One of them, Banana Robe, sent me a photo of the rental contract over text. Like that would make me shut up. The sender was listed as Cypress Prop, and the signature at the bottom said, K. Delmore, authorized HOA agent Wright. This just got interesting. By the time the sheriff's SUV pulled in, I was vibrating with adrenaline, but I kept it together. I had the deed in one hand, my phone in the other, and a cold fury simmering just under the surface. I wasn't letting this go. Not now. Not ever. Not after what my dad told me before he died. This house is yours, son. Don't let anyone take it from you. And the land, it's yours too. One day someone will try. Don't let him near it. He was right. And now it was my turn. The sheriff's SUV rolled up the dirt drive just as the clouds started to gather over the lake, heavy and gray. I swear the timing was cinematic. 2 deputies stepped out first, both big guys, hands resting casually on their belts, eyes scanning the property. Then came Sheriff Dale Carver himself, a man I hadn't seen since my dad's funeral. Same mustache, same patient stare that could turn iron into confession. "Well, I'll be damned," he said when he saw me. "Grayson Wilkins. Thought I'd never see you back up here." "Guess I missed the welcoming committee," I said, motioning toward the porch where the 3 tenants were now pretending to look innocent. The dog had vanished, but the smell of stale beer lingered like a curse. Carver tilted his head. "You called in a trespass?" "Yeah, 3 of them. Claim they rented the place through someone named Karen Delmore, HOA agent." That got a small grunt out of him. Half amusement, half disbelief. The HOA again. Figures. He turned toward the men. "All right, fellas, let's see some ID." Cargo Shorts tried to play tough, crossing his arms. "We don't have to show you anything, man. We paid for this place fair and square. Got a signed lease and everything." "Then show it," Carver said calmly. The one with the bat, who now wisely kept it resting against the porch railing, pulled out his phone and opened a PDF. He held it out. "Right here, officer. 6-month lease. Authorized by the HOA. They said the owner was absentee. That'd be him, right?" He nodded at me with a smirk. Carver squinted at the screen. "Who signed this?" "K. Delmore," the man said as if invoking the name of a saint. "Authorized HOA agent." "Authorized by who?" Carver asked. "By the HOA, obviously." "Uh-huh." Carver handed the phone to one of his deputies. "Run that name. Check local licensing." While they did that, I walked to my truck and came back with a folder. "Here," I said, handing Carver the deed, title transfer, and a laminated copy of the property map. "House belongs to me. Inherited from my father. Paid the last property tax 3 months ago." Also, I flipped open another page. This map from the county zoning office showing the HOA boundary line. "Notice anything?" Carver looked it over, then gave a small chuckle. "Your place ain't even inside the HOA limits." "That's right. Never was." By now, the deputy had returned. "Sheriff, there's no license for any authorized HOA agent under that name. Closest match is a Karen Delmore, but she's flagged in an old county database." "Flagged how?" "Lost her real estate license 6 years ago for document fraud." The air went still. Cargo Shorts blinked. "What?" "Nah, you're lying. She runs the HOA, man. She's got a badge and everything." Carver raised a brow. "A badge?" "Yeah, like an ID card. Says HOA Authority, Cypress Lake Estates." The other deputy stepped forward. "Sir, if you're claiming she's an agent, do you have any receipts or communication proving payment?" The man hesitated. We sent her the money through Venmo." Carver turned to me. Deadpan. "Venmo?" "Venmo," I repeated. "Real professional." Mia stood a few steps behind me, holding Elias's hand, both watching in uneasy silence. She whispered, "Can they really just rent out someone's house like this?" "Not legally," I muttered. "All right," Carver said, voice sharp again. "Here's how this is going to go. You 3 pack your things. You got 10 minutes. Any property damage will be documented, and you'll be charged for trespass and vandalism." Bat Guy's voice cracked. "This is bullshit. We got a contract." "Signed by a fraud," Carver said, folding his arms. "That makes you victims. Or accomplices. You decide which." Cargo shorts kicked the porch railing. "Karen's gonna sue your ass, Sheriff. You'll see. She's got people in City Hall." That caught my attention. "City Hall?" He glared at me. "Yeah, some guy she called Myers or something. He's the one who confirmed the map, said this house fell under temporary HOA management." Carver turned sharply to his deputy. "Note that. R. Myers, municipal contact." The next few minutes felt like slow-motion satisfaction. The tenants stomped around inside, packing bags, mumbling curses under their breath. The deputies recorded everything on their body cams, while I documented the damage. Scratches on the hardwood floor, empty beer bottles, a burn mark on the kitchen counter. When they finally emerged, the one in the robe tried to shove past the sheriff. Carver didn't even blink, just spun him around and cuffed him. "Interfering with an investigation," he said flatly. "You can make your call from the station." The other two shouted protests as the cuffs clicked. The dog barked from inside. Mia whispered to Elias, ushering him back into the car, away from the noise. When the dust settled, the sheriff turned to me. "I'll file this as a property invasion and fraudulent tenancy. We'll need your statement and copies of everything you filmed." "Already uploaded to the cloud," I said. "And Sheriff, I appreciate you getting here fast." He gave me a look, not friendly, not cold, just steady. "Grayson, you remember what I told your dad years ago? Don't let those HOA folks near this place. They think they own half the county. Guess they're still trying." He nodded, glanced toward the lake. "Something's fishy about this. That woman's name's been floating around my office for years, always skirting the line between civic duty and straight-up con artistry. But this time she might have crossed it." I looked back at the cabin, my father's cabin, and felt a slow burn crawl up my spine. "Then it's about time someone stopped her." Carver smirked faintly. "Careful, son. When folks like that feel cornered, they don't just roll over, they bite." He was right. I didn't know it yet, but that bite was coming, and it had a name. Karen Delmore. We had just started loading up the last of the squatters' garbage bags, beer cans, a broken camping chair, someone's disgusting mattress, when the sound of tires screeching on gravel made every head turn. A sleek black SUV whipped into the drive like it was trying to kill someone. It didn't stop at the edge of the lot, didn't slow down for the ruts or pine roots, just barreled right up, jerking to a halt 10 feet from the porch. Out stepped the Hurricane in human form. Late 50s, frosted bob, oversized sunglasses, bright red lipstick applied like war paint. She was dressed like she was walking into a corporate boardroom, not someone else's felony scene. Blazer, slacks, high heels that stabbed into the dirt with every furious step. And on her chest, like a deputy from some HOA Wild West, hung a plastic lanyard. Cypress Lake Estates, HO. Authorized agent, Karen Delmore the Karen. She didn't even glance at me, didn't acknowledge the sheriff. She just walked right past us and started barking at her tenants. "Why are your things outside? What is going on here?" She snapped at the two guys by the Jeep, who looked like little boys caught stealing candy. Dan opened his mouth to say something, but Karen cut him off. "Where's the sheriff? I want to speak to him. Now." Carver, still holding the arrest report from earlier, looked up like he'd just stepped into a theater halfway through the movie. "Ms. Delmore, I presume." She turned, flashing him what might have once passed for a smile before it evolved into a full-time weapon. "That's correct. HOA Cypress Lake Estates. These renters are under our extended occupancy authority. This house was classified as temporarily abandoned per Municipal Housing Ordinance 12C. We acted accordingly under Section 8 HOA guidelines, and now I demand to know why they're being evicted." Carver raised an eyebrow. "You're saying you placed tenants in this house?" "Yes. The HOA board empowered me to manage vacant properties within the HOA's jurisdiction. We filed the paperwork with the municipal office weeks ago. This property was listed as unoccupied and—" He cut her off. "This house isn't in your HOA." Karen blinked. "Excuse me?" He turned the page around and held up the zoning map I'd provided earlier. County records, updated last year. This parcel, Wilkins property, was explicitly excluded from Cypress Lake Estates by court order 12 years ago. HOA jurisdiction ends 2 blocks south of here. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. Her eyes narrowed behind the sunglasses. That's outdated. No, ma'am, it's not. I called it in before you got here, confirmed with the zoning office. This house is not, and never was, part of your authority. And your rental contract is null and void. You had no legal right to lease this property. Karen's nostrils flared. Then the property should not have been listed as abandoned. It wasn't, I said, stepping in now. I've been paying taxes every year. Power's been off, but the county has me listed as active owner. No forfeiture, no notice, no lien. You filed that fake status through someone in the city, didn't you? I don't have to listen to this, she snapped. Yes, you do, Carver said, suddenly all steel. Because at minimum, this is unauthorized entry. At worst, fraud, criminal impersonation, and unlawful property leasing. Karen's posture changed. She stiffened, shifted her weight slightly, like she was about to pounce. I have documentation, she said, pulling a thick folder from her bag and approaching the sheriff. Everything is here. Recorded filings, contracts, HOA approvals, authority badges, and... She shoved the folder toward him like it was a battering ram. Carver reached for it, but she yanked it back. No, wait. Then, without warning, she swung it into his face. A loud thwack. The folder hit him square across the cheek, hard enough to knock his hat askew. For one surreal second, no one moved. The whole world paused. Birds went silent. Wind stopped blowing. Even the damn dog inside the house stopped barking. Then the deputies tackled her. It was not a delicate arrest. One officer pinned her to the ground, while the other wrenched her arms behind her back. Her heels flew off in different directions. That plastic HOA badge got crushed under a boot. She screamed about unlawful restraint, board immunity, and something about a municipal authorization clause. But it all just blended into one long, screeching siren of self-delusion. Carver stood up slowly, brushing dust off his shoulder. You just assaulted a law enforcement officer with a legal document, he said. I don't even have a box to check for that. Karen was still kicking. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I know people. City council, zoning board. Hell, I pay half their salaries with my property taxes. Carver nodded to his deputy. Mirandize her. You're all making a huge mistake, she shouted as they dragged her toward the squad car. I watched from the driveway, arms folded. Elias had climbed into Mia's lap and was asking if that lady was going to jail. Yes, I told him, she is. They searched her SUV before towing it. Inside, they found multiple printed rental agreements, all signed by K. Delmore, HOA agent. Some addresses were familiar, others weren't. One had a sticky note attached. Call R. Myers. Confirm code status before listing. Carver pocketed the note. As the patrol car rolled away, Karen still shouting in the back seat like a banshee in a power suit. I finally let out the breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The storm was far from over, but for the first time since I pulled into the driveway that morning, I felt like the ground under my feet actually belonged to me again. The house was mine again, technically, but it didn't feel like it. Karen had been dragged away in handcuffs, screaming about bylaws and immunity like she was still running a corporate Zoom call from the back of a police cruiser. But the aftermath? That was quiet. Too quiet. The dog was gone. The squatters were booked and released. Sheriff Carver left with more questions than answers, and I stood on my own porch with Mia, looking at a place I used to call home and wondering how much of it was still mine. The inside of the house smelled like stale beer and dog piss. The floors were sticky in places. There were cigarette burns on the window ledge in the upstairs bedroom, the one I used to sleep in every summer as a kid. They'd left trash behind. Empty snack wrappers, vape cartridges, a condom wrapper on the bathroom counter, and, bizarrely, a single Crocs sandal stuffed in the fireplace. Mia looked around horrified. I don't want Elias sleeping here. Not yet. She was right. We booked a room at a motel a few miles up the road. Something clean, anonymous. The kind of place that left the Bible on the nightstand and a mint on the pillow. Elias didn't ask many questions. He was too busy playing with the plastic room key, pretending it was a magic sword. I didn't sleep much that night. By morning, I had a plan. I called Josh Becker, friend, ex-college roommate, now real estate attorney and perpetual cynic. He answered on the third ring. Grayson Wilkins, he said. You only call me when there's paperwork or blood. Which is it? Bit of both, I said. Someone leased out my house without my permission. Turns out it was a woman named Karen Delmore, HOA agent, allegedly. That name rings a bell, Josh muttered. Give me a few hours. While he got to work, I made my own calls. I reached out to a private investigator Mia and I had hired once when a contractor skipped town on a job in Oregon. Guy named Marty Hewitt used to work fraud cases for the state, now freelanced for lawyers and paranoid husbands. The man was basically a walking FOIA request in cargo pants. He showed up that afternoon in a sun-faded sedan with a trunk full of files and a cooler full of Diet Mountain Dew. I did a fast pull on your Karen Delmore, he said, flipping open a folder in the motel lobby like it was a case briefing. Born in Florida, moved to Minnesota 15 years ago, opened a boutique real estate firm called Delmore Realty, operated for a decade, lost her license 6 years ago. Why? I asked. Fraud, document tampering, signed leases on homes she didn't represent, forged owner approvals, the works. Couple of settlements, one sealed criminal plea deal, got her license pulled and was blackballed from any legit brokerage in the Tri-County area. Mia looked up from her coffee. So how did she end up running an HOA? Started small, Marty said. Volunteered on a neighborhood board, just a secretary position at first. Took over budgeting, found legal loopholes. People liked that. Said she got things done. Eventually, they made her board president. I shook my head. Unreal. It gets better, Marty added. She also incorporated a side business, Cypress Property Management, LLC, registered in a neighboring county. Guess who signs all the fake leases? She does. Bingo. Josh called later that evening, sounding pissed. You remember the name R. Myers? He asked. The city guy she mentioned? Yeah. Randall Myers. Mid-level clerk at the Municipal Infrastructure Office. Not technically involved in property disputes, but guess what? He's been quietly pushing reclassifications of several properties as temporarily abandoned. You're telling me. I'm telling you the reclassification on your house was flagged as abandoned using a fast-track clause meant for condemned or hazardous buildings, and it was approved with zero inspection. Guess who signed off on it? Myers. Gold star. That night, Marty showed me a map with red pins, at least 4 other homes in the county marked with the same pattern. Owner leaves temporarily, travel, illness, deployment. Property quietly flagged as abandoned. Karen's HOA, or her management company, files paperwork to secure and lease the home. Rent collected, no owners notified, no legal leases filed with the recorder's office. It wasn't just us. It was a system. One of the pins was a house owned by a 79-year-old widow, currently in assisted living. Her daughter had come home to find tenants who wouldn't leave. Another was a house owned by a military officer stationed in Germany. His neighbors had assumed he was renting it out to help with the mortgage. Jesus, I muttered, looking at the pattern. It's not just fraud, Josh said. It's predatory theft facilitated by municipal indifference or corruption. This could go federal. I started collecting affidavits. Marty helped me track down the other victims. A few didn't want to talk, embarrassed, scared. One woman broke down crying on the phone, said she'd been trying to contact the HOA for months, thinking her mail was just getting lost. I recorded it all. Photos, statements, maps. I compiled a dossier thicker than a church Bible and took it straight to Carver. He whistled when he saw it. You did my job for me. I want her charged with everything, I said. I want that HOA gutted, her company dissolved, and if Myers is dirty, I want his ass in cuffs. Carver took off his hat and leaned back. Slow down, son. This ain't Netflix. We do this the right way. But make no mistake, this is going to get loud. That was fine by me. I was done being quiet. The legal firestorm started slow, a flicker of heat in the background. But within a week, it was a full-blown inferno. It began when Josh filed the official complaint in county court, Wilkins vs. Delmore et al., naming Karen Cypress Property Management and the HOA Board of Cypress Lake Estates as co-defendants in a civil suit for unlawful occupation, fraud, and damages to private property. Within 48 hours, Karen's name was on the docket, and Marty's dossier, thick with interviews, tax records, maps, Venmo receipts, HOA memos, and more, was submitted into evidence. The judge didn't just greenlight the case. He ordered an emergency injunction freezing all activity from Cypress Property Management pending a full investigation. And that's when everything started to crack. The HOA board, so smug and silent until now, suddenly remembered how to talk. First, a public statement. The Cypress Lake Estates Homeowners Association is shocked and dismayed by recent allegations involving Ms. Delmore. The board had no knowledge of any illegal activity, and we are fully cooperating with authorities. Translation: We're throwing Karen under the bus faster than a raccoon on fire. But the documents told a different story. Josh subpoenaed internal HOA emails and records, and what we got painted a much darker picture. Meeting minutes showed that Karen had been formally empowered by a board vote to manage and utilize any properties considered non-occupied per city status. Several emails referenced her housing revitalization plan, a fancy way of saying rent other people's homes without telling them. And buried in a folder labeled Operational Agreements was a scanned memo dated 2 years ago, confirming that Cypress Lake Estates would cover Karen's legal fees in case of civil disputes relating to property management duties. That wasn't ignorance. That was institutional backing. Meanwhile, Randall Myers was still sitting pretty at City Hall, at least for another 2 days. Marty had been quietly poking around, using a contact in municipal IT. He got access to Myers' email logs and found something smoking hot, an internal memo where Myers personally reclassified 5 homes as abandoned despite conflicting ownership data. More than that, a few of those memos were flagged by other employees as potentially improper, and one even included a handwritten sticky note. Karen called, pushing this one through, per usual. We forwarded that to Carver immediately. The sheriff moved fast. He and 2 investigators showed up at City Hall unannounced. Myers tried to play dumb, then tried to be outraged, then tried to be quiet. It didn't work. When they showed him the sticky note and subpoenaed his personal devices, his face went white like someone hit the off switch on his soul. They walked him out in cuffs by lunch. Local news was all over it that evening. The headline read, "City official arrested in expanding HOA fraud scheme." The article mentioned multiple forged property reclassifications, possible bribery, and illegal leasing of private homes. Karen's mugshot made the front page, looking like someone who'd lost a beauty pageant and a lawsuit on the same day. But none of this stopped the HOA from trying to save face. They lawyered up fast. I started getting letters, friendly on the surface, threatening underneath. While the Cypress Lake Estates HOA respects your legal position, we believe your property is within a transitional boundary zone and may be subject to oversight pending clarification from municipal zoning authorities. Josh practically laughed when he read that. They're trying to pretend your house is Schrodinger's parcel, he said, simultaneously in and out of the HOA depending on who's asking. We countered with the court-validated zoning map and a notarized statement from the original ruling 12 years ago that formally excluded my father's property from any HOA jurisdiction. Then the HOA changed tactics. They sued me back. Yep, full countersuit. Claimed defamation, property interference, and emotional distress. I swear to God, they used those words. But Josh was ready. He countered their countersuit so fast it made their attorney's tie spin. "You're not just defending your house," Josh told me. "You're exposing an entire mechanism that weaponizes bureaucracy. And they're scared." He was right. Every day, more homeowners started stepping forward. Marty's inbox exploded with tips. Some had stories similar to mine, returning home to find strangers living inside. Others had just been harassed by HOA members threatening fines for things that weren't in any bylaw. There were patterns. Karen had repeatedly used the same contractor to secure homes. He was now under audit for unlicensed property entry. A small bank account linked to Cypress Property Management showed monthly deposits from at least 8 different tenants, none of whom had ever signed a lease with the actual property owner. And one renter admitted, off the record, that he was offered free rent for silence when he questioned the lease. "You're unraveling a racket," Marty said. "Not just one bad apple, a whole barrel soaked in gasoline." It was bigger than I'd imagined, and now the courts, the sheriff's office, and the local press were all watching. Still, part of me wondered, how many more layers did this go? Because every time we thought we'd hit bottom, something else came crawling out of the dark. It was amazing how quickly the HOA went from smug silence to full-blown panic. A week ago, they acted like they were the Vatican. Now, they were leaking like a screen door in a submarine. The countersuit didn't stick, The court tossed it within 72 hours, calling it legally frivolous and retaliatory. Josh celebrated by sending their lawyer a gift basket. No note, just a plush stuffed raccoon holding a good luck balloon. That didn't stop them from scrambling. HOA meetings turned into closed-door affairs. Community newsletters stopped going out. The official Cypress Lake Estates website suddenly went offline, replaced with a page under maintenance screen that looked like it hadn't been touched since dial-up. But I wasn't waiting for them to implode on their own. Marty and I started reaching out to other homeowners, the ones who'd been quietly dealing with fines, threats, and mandatory improvements they never approved. Turned out the HOA had been weaponizing its bylaws for years, mostly under Karen's leadership. Everything from grass height to unauthorized window tint had been used to fine residents into submission. And they always paid, because fighting the HOA meant lawyers, and lawyers meant money. Until now. Until one guy stood his ground and kicked over the ant pile. Word spread fast. We organized a town hall meeting at a local rec center. Expected maybe 20 people. Over 80 showed up. Some brought folders. Others brought photos. One woman came with a literal box full of unopened HOA warnings. People weren't just angry. They were ashamed. They thought it was just them. They thought they'd done something wrong. That was the real power of the HOA's grip. Isolation, guilt, divide, and conquer. But not anymore. A man named Peter Lang, a retired accountant, soft-spoken and sharp, stepped forward with a bombshell. He had once been part of the Cypress HOA board, briefly for about 6 months. She ran it like a cartel, he said, speaking of Karen. You didn't ask questions. You signed what she gave you. Or you got voted out. The treasurer resigned the week I joined, told me not to dig too deep. He did anyway. Lang had copies of financial reports, discrepancies between incoming HOA dues and outgoing expenses. Thousands marked as discretionary housing outreach, but the money trail led straight to Karen's shell company. Lang raised concerns. Karen responded by accusing him of harassment and destabilizing the board. He quit. She stayed. Until now. Josh took Lang's testimony and filed a secondary motion for financial misappropriation. That opened the door for state-level review, and that's when the Attorney General's office got involved. Suddenly, Karen wasn't just an arrogant fraudster with a fake title. She was the face of a regional criminal probe, and the board. They turned on her faster than a pack of starving dogs. Within days, 3 HOA board members filed individual affidavits stating that they had signed authorizations under duress or based on incomplete documentation provided by President Delmore. One of them, a former local contractor, admitted to receiving unexplained bonuses for board participation, translation, bribes. The HOA held an emergency vote to suspend all board activity pending legal clarification. No more fines, no more enforcement, no more pretending everything was fine. It was over. But Karen didn't go quietly. Even from jail, she made noise. Her attorney filed a statement claiming she was being politically targeted by wealthy landowners and anti-HOA extremists, which was hilarious considering I drove a 15-year-old truck and hadn't shaved properly in 3 days. She also claimed she had municipal endorsements that authorized everything she did. Josh shut that down by dragging Myers' emails into the courtroom and letting the prosecutors do the rest. Meanwhile, Randall Myers tried to make a deal. He admitted to taking money, not a fortune, just enough to pay off credit cards and keep his boat. Said Karen promised him it was all legal, that the owners never came back anyway. His statements included the phrase, "everyone was doing it," more than once. He was charged with public corruption, document forgery, and conspiracy to defraud. He tried to cry at the press conference. It didn't work. The county issued a press release the next day. Effective immediately, the Cypress Lake Estates Homeowners Association is under suspension. A court-appointed administrator will oversee its functions pending outcome of legal proceedings. All HOA-related enforcement actions are to cease. It was the bureaucratic version of a death sentence. I drove back to the house the next morning. For the first time in weeks, the gate wasn't blocked by some city truck or rental car. No notices taped to my door. No angry letters in the mailbox. Just birdsong and the breeze off the lake. Inside still smelled faintly like stale smoke and bleach. But it was quiet. I stood in the living room, stared out of the back window, and saw the dock my dad built. Still there. Still solid. A knock came at the door. It was Peter Lang, the accountant. He handed me a folder. "They're going to hold a special vote," he said. "The community wants to formally dissolve the HOA, permanently. No replacement, no restructuring, just gone." I nodded. "Good." He hesitated. "Some of us were scared. For too long. That ends now." It did. Karen had turned control into a business model. She didn't care about property values or community harmony. She wanted power. Real estate was just her playground. The HOA, her disguise, and now the costume had been ripped away. The courthouse smelled like floor polish and anxiety. It was a solid stone building, built in the early 1990s with brass door handles and hard wooden benches that creaked every time someone exhaled too loud. The kind of place where bad decisions had been handed down for over a century. But today, we were hoping for a good one. State of Minnesota versus Karen Delmore, Cypress Property Management, and associated co-conspirators. She showed up in a navy blue suit, hair grayer than it had been a month ago, flanked by two lawyers who looked like they charged by the syllable. She didn't glance at the gallery, didn't acknowledge the people she'd hurt, just marched in like she still ran something. The courtroom was full. There were reporters from both local stations and one regional network. A guy in the back row had an HOA watchdog blog and a t-shirt that said, "Bylaws aren't laws." I sat in the second row with Mia and Josh on either side of me, and behind us were at least a dozen other homeowners, victims who, like me, had found their lives upended by one woman's hunger for power and control. The prosecution didn't waste time. They laid it out clean. Karen, a former realtor with a history of document tampering, had leveraged her position as HOA board president to illegally seize, lease, and profit from properties she did not own. She created a private company, Cypress Property Management, and funneled funds through it using fake leases and city hall connections. They presented testimonies from 6 homeowners, including me, signed statements from renters who'd paid her directly, copies of forged lease agreements and HOA resolutions she had typed herself and pushed through with fabricated board votes. Financial records showing over $210,000 in income that never appeared on HOA books, but did end up in a business account tied to her personal checking. When they got to Randall Myers, he sat in the witness box looking like a deflated balloon in a suit jacket. He confirmed everything, that he'd reclassified properties at her request, received small payments in return, and assumed she had the legal authority. "Did you ever verify ownership?" the prosecutor asked. "No," Myers mumbled. "Did you ever ask why these homes were being rented through an HOA instead of a licensed property manager?" "I didn't think about it." His voice cracked on the last part. The courtroom was silent. Then it was my turn. I walked up in my one decent blazer, heart pounding hard enough I could hear it in my ears. I swore in, took a seat, and told the truth. About my dad, about the house, about coming home with my wife and son to find strangers on my porch drinking beer and pissing on my memories. I told them about Karen's arrogance, the fake contract, the forged authority, the assault on the sheriff, and how she weaponized a community institution to serve her own interests. Then I said something I hadn't planned to. "She didn't just steal square footage," I said, looking straight at her. "She stole time. She stole the comfort of coming home. That house was all I had left of my father, and she sold it like it was a goddamn timeshare." Karen didn't flinch. She just looked at me like I was beneath her, like I was the problem. The prosecutor thanked me and let me go. Next came the others. The widow's daughter, the Army officer's brother, a young woman who'd been falsely fined into near foreclosure. One after another, they laid out the pattern: lies, manipulation, silence, and a system that protected the abuser until someone finally pushed back. Karen's lawyers tried their best. They argued the leases had been well-intentioned misunderstandings, that the HOA had broad authority, that Karen believed in good faith she was helping revitalize empty homes and protect community standards. They painted her as a visionary, misunderstood, and scapegoated. But the facts didn't care about their story. By the time they rested their defense, even the judge looked bored. The prosecution's closing argument was simple. This was fraud, plain and calculated. She used the letterhead of a community organization to justify theft. And she did it repeatedly, for profit. Karen's team tried to stall with procedural noise, objections, motions, none of it stuck. And then the jury went into deliberation. Hours passed. We waited. Some of the homeowners sat in the hallway, whispering. One woman prayed quietly. Josh paced like a lawyer on his 7th espresso. Mia held my hand the whole time, like she knew I was about to collapse under the weight of it all. When the bailiff finally called us back in, my stomach felt like it was on a tilt-a-whirl. The jury foreman stood up, older man, denim shirt under his sport coat. We, the jury, find the defendant, Karen Delmore. He paused. Guilty on all counts. There was no cheering, just silence. A heavy, exhausted silence that somehow meant more than applause ever could. Karen didn't react, not a blink, not a sigh. Like she'd already retreated somewhere deep inside, unreachable. The judge scheduled sentencing for the following week, and just like that, it was done. Or so we thought. Sentencing day came on a Thursday. Cloudy sky. No wind, the kind of quiet that feels like the world's holding its breath. I didn't go alone this time. Mia came with me, holding a thermos of coffee and Elias's hand. He wore a button-up shirt and looked both bored and oddly serious, like he was performing courtroom boy for a school play. A few other victims came too. Not all, some had moved on, others wanted to forget, but enough to fill 2 rows of benches. Karen entered in handcuffs. The suit was gone. She wore jail-issue beige, hair tied back, no makeup, no badge, no authority. The judge, an older man with the kind of face that had seen every excuse in the book, asked if she had anything to say before sentencing. She stood. I never intended to harm anyone, she began. I acted on behalf of a community that was crumbling. People weren't caring for their homes. Properties were abandoned. I filled a gap. I protected the neighborhood. The judge raised a brow. You protected it by forging leases and placing strangers in other people's homes? Karen's voice didn't falter. In my view, I was serving the greater good. She truly believed it. That was the scariest part. The judge didn't waste time. Karen Delmore, he said, you have been found guilty on multiple counts of real estate fraud, criminal impersonation, document forgery, and conspiracy to defraud private citizens. He went on to note the premeditated nature of her scheme, her lack of remorse, her history of prior misconduct, and her abuse of community trust. You operated with arrogance, entitlement, and a reckless disregard for law or decency. You didn't just break rules, you built your own system on top of them. Then came the hammer. 12 years. No possibility of parole for the first 8. Karen didn't cry, didn't shout. She just nodded once like she was taking mental notes for a Yelp review of the justice system. They let her out through a side door. She didn't look back. And, just like that, it was over. But endings in courtrooms aren't real endings. Paperwork is just paper. Healing doesn't come from a sentence. It comes from rebuilding. 2 months later, the Cypress Lake Estates HOA was formally dissolved by vote of the residents. 72 in favor, 3 against, including a guy who admitted afterward that he voted no by accident because he thought the ballot was upside down. A court-appointed administrator liquidated the HOA's assets. Fines were refunded. A fund was set up to cover property repairs for those who'd been affected. Several lawsuits were dropped after settlements were reached. Karen's fake company was officially shut down, its accounts seized. Josh got invited to speak at a legal ethics conference. Marty got hired by a bigger firm specializing in community corruption cases. Peter Lang helped write a community charter, not an HOA, just a cooperative of homeowners who actually wanted to, cooperate. As for me, I rebuilt. Not metaphorically, I literally tore out the damaged floors, gutted the waterlogged drywall, restained the porch, and replaced every light fixture in the house. I spent a weekend with Elias putting up new shutters. He picked green because it looks like frog armor. Close enough. We installed a new gate. Thick steel with a code lock and a motion sensor, not because I'm paranoid, because I finally understand what my dad meant. That last summer, before he died, he told me, "This house is yours, but it won't always feel like it. Not when people start telling you what's best for it, how it should look, who should live there. That's when you remember, this place is yours, and no one else gets to define it." I didn't really understand him until I stood in my own living room and watched strangers get dragged out. I understand now. We framed his old fishing license and hung it above the fireplace. Next to it, a photo of the dock he built with his own hands. Below that, a plaque that reads, "You were right, Dad. They tried to take it, but I'm still here." The lake is quiet again. No strange cars, no false contracts, no Karen. Just my family, the trees, and the sound of water against the shore. It's not perfect, but it's home.